know what I would have done.
I know.
Don't I want to be an attendee?
Black.
Recording in progress.
Yeah.
There's minutes and.
Mary Beth,
Speak
you're
up.
listening out loud if somebody's joining.
Okay.
So we're all know. Like, on the call or? You guys can, okay, good. Well, be through actually.
We're waiting for a second, I think.
I'm trying.
Echo? Good. We can call this meeting to order at 6:06. With us, we have Leslie Byrne, Steve Kessler, Lynn Soroy, Allison Carey Belay, Kathy Hunter, Kim Pride, Heather Rogers. We are joined also with Pam LeDuc and Mark Waltz. And we know we have a guest present today, which is Mary Beth Canning with Canning Consulting. Thank you for coming very much.
Thanks for having me.
So this is where we, any guests we kind of invite to speak and explain maybe why you're here and all that. So I guess we can get right to it. Lynn, is that what you want to do?
She comes at number 5, so
Yeah.
I think that would be any other guests that are present.
No, which are none. Great. Do we have any changes to this agenda?
No. I don't think there's any changes now.
And I guess we can go over the building steps with Mr. Mark.
Sure. So we have, Pam and I met with the fair board, get my meetings confused, and we think we have a tentative agreement for the right of way. We shared it with the select board Thursday night and they're okay with it. So we're at the step now, we need to send it to the attorney and get it put up into the agreement, then we give it back to the fair to look at. I haven't heard from them if it needs to be approved by the whole fair or just the board of whole fair membership. On our end, probably it's gonna have to be approved at town meeting, but more to come once the attorney finishes drafting it and stuff. The key part of the agreement is that it would be contingent upon the community center being built. Because the fair doesn't necessarily want a housing subdivision to be built back there, which is understandable. And in fact, I also was resting or trying to calm their fears because our deed from the state actually says we can only use it for community purposes. So if we tried to build a housing subdivision, the land would revert to the state. But it seemed like I think a good agreement on everyone's part, that basically, if it gets finalized as we expect, we would get a right of way at the point that the building's being voted to proceed, either by a bond or something else. So that I thought was good news. The other thing I've done is, and this will come up more when we get to Mary Beth's section, is that the select board basically here's a lot from, we were talking about taxes even before the meeting started out here. And the biggest opposition to this building is people saying, I don't want a significant tax increase. And all along, and the same thing I told the fair board, because there's some people that are expressing to them, they don't want the community center because they don't want the tax increase, is that we need to find a way to do this without a significant tax increase, or the select board's not going to put it on the ballot and the citizens aren't going to vote for it. So one of the ways we thought or the select board wanted to try to do this is to have an 18-month period to raise as much money as we can. And people maybe are not so anxious to give money to something if they don't think it's, not sure it's gonna happen. So what I've passed along, which if Leslie wants to keep handing them out, is on Thursday night, the select board approved a reserve account. And the purpose of this reserve account is to accept money for the donations for the community center. And if you would like to, at the time you don't make your donation, so we'll have to come up with a form of some sort. But if your donation is over $500, you can designate that it would be returned if it didn't happen, to make people feel more comfortable with giving and stuff. And the kind of the deadline that we would need to break ground or start the construction process without having to give back the donors over 500 that want their donors back would be December 31st, 2028 is the thinking behind it. Pam was part of a group that got some good news from Maine Health last month, that they are interested in making a significant donation. Now that this has been set up, I'm gonna go back to them and talk to them more about it. I've also had some contact from a local real estate developer who's interested in making a significant donation. And I suggested to him, maybe his donation, he could do as like a matching thing to spur more donations. And he said he'd be happy to do that. So I think there is definitely some interest out there for people that would like to donate to it. But that's kind of, I guess, the mechanism from our end. And we can talk about when we get to your item, but we just wanted to set the fund up. So as of last Thursday night, we now have a reserve account that can accept donations for the community center. So that's the two pieces I've been working on. The next piece is I want to get the RFP drafted. My goal for the next phase of the architectural design, my goal is to have that ready for the first meeting in December, which I'm actually on vacation that week. So I'll see how comfortable Jeff is, or if any of you are presenting it. If no one is, then we'd save it for the second meeting in December. But I didn't want to really work on that till I felt like I had a path with the fairgrounds. And I think we have a path that looks like it's going to work. So it's great.
It's amazing.
Who did you say the first potentially large donation?
Maine Health.
Maine Health, when they united with Parkview years ago, created a endowment fund, so to speak, that they give away money. They were very much involved with the building of the Tedford Shelter Apartments. They have contributed to the Brunswick Youth Center. They've contributed to the Midcoast Youth Center. Youth is primarily their objective. So they see the need. Chris Hoffman, the principal of the high school, happened to be at the meeting with me, as well as the police chief and the ATM. That's what we're calling the assistant town manager. Instead of Jeff. He's the ATM. But we were all in attendance, and Dr. Bouvet was very excited and didn't really pinpoint a figure, but gave us a ballpark. That was included. And I've kept my mouth shut. I've seen a lot of you around town, and we saved it for tonight because we were so excited.
And there's 6 digits in it.
Yes, there are 6 digits.
Wow.
So-
Tell us the number. Beginning of the 6 digits.
I think, so my feel from it, there was a minimum of 100. But there also, my sense from them was, depending upon our case and how well we present it and how well connected we are to the community and the youth in the community. So when we're starting to put our program design together, when starting to do all of those things, we really look at that role that it has, that I think we could argue for considerably more.
Cool. So Mark, I have 2 questions.
Mhm.
Can you maybe give us like a ballpark of what they would consider us raising a significant amount of funds? I mean, if we hit like, say, 500,000, is that gonna be enough? Or are we
I'd say
gonna
no.
have to hit?
I'd say no.
couple
We need
million?
it- I'd say millions.
Okay,
It also depends the scale building you want too. Yeah.
Yeah,
But if it includes the pool,
yeah,
definitely
then
millions.
definitely, okay.
This is only me. This isn't anything the select board said. I think the impact on the taxes needs to be 1 to 2% at most.
Okay,
That's attributed just to this. The ways I'm hoping we can find to make that happen are, we have 2 TIFs that are about to expire in the next couple of years. What I'd like to do, and some of it's gonna need to go just for general budget increases, because everything increases.
Right,
But I want to keep, let's say we had an extra 400,000 in next year's taxes. And let's say 200 of it needs to go just to help cover budget increases and keep taxes from growing too much. I'd like to take the other 200 and put it towards a reserve for the community center for 2 reasons. One is it's putting more money towards it. 2 is it keeps us from having a big tax increase when we do a bond for the community center. So those are opportunities. We have this group that approached us in about a year ago. The last time we heard from them was July, but they want to build something called a battery storage farm at the Bisson
right,
farm.
yeah,
That they told us, they've been arguing about the value some, but they told us it was worth $300 million. $300 million at our current tax rate would be over $3 million a year in new tax revenue. Interesting, we haven't heard from them since they came in July. And so maybe they've moved on, but they claim that even with the changes in the federal government's green energy stuff, they said battery storage was still being favored, even though they're getting rid of some of the solar subsidies and things. Because basically without battery storage, we're not gonna have a stable grid with all the renewable energy stuff. Andy Bisson had told me that he had another group approach him before the current one. So in my mind, if we can clear the zoning stuff to make the battery storage possible, someone is gonna wanna build there, because Andy's got too good a site for it. And it's also economic development initiative for the Bisson farm, because Andy said he really needs this to survive, because the price of seeds going up, his price of electricity is going up, everything else. So the Energy Committee has enthusiastically took this on as a project. At their meeting next week, we're going to be starting work on proposed ordinances so that we could do the battery storage farm. And we've got a member of the Energy Committee that actually went to, I think she went to Vermont Law School. She's got classmates that were involved in the battery storage law and other places. They're sending her some model ordinances. And she actually lives in Westwood, which is nice.
Not far
Because
from-
the biggest
down the
fear of
road.
the battery storage plant is the
Right,
fire fear.
Yeah,
So we're looking at state of the art, how do you minimize that? How do you, but, so our goal with that, if we can clear that to make a battery storage farm happen, we're gonna get a shot in the arm.
yeah, for sure.
Other things we're trying to, or thinking about is the tax increment financing district law currently does not allow you to use the town share to do a community
Right,
center.
right.
They've been moving slowly to allowing more municipal uses. So I've been talking to the guy that runs the MRA out of the base. He used to,
Yeah,
Stevenson, he used to be in the the Economic Development Office of the state. He's willing to help craft some language. Matt Eddy with Mid-Coast Council Developments is willing. Right now, this legislative session, you're not supposed to be doing new legislation because it's the second part. But so another thing we're trying to work on is, can we get the TIF statute amended so that the town share could go towards a community center?
Right.
If that happens, because the other piece that's going on is Crooker's considering doing something to redevelop their site. And there's some people interested in developing across I-295 at the 100-acre piece. Either one of those happens, they're probably gonna be looking for some side of a TIF. So in my mind, what better way to fund a community center? So there's a lot of moving pieces, but I think the goal is over the next 2.5 years or whatever, to try to get enough of these pieces together so that we could lower the cost enough through fundraising and have some of these alternative methods and get a bond that would not affect things more than 1 or 2%, to make it.
Right.
That's my goal, so.
Do you think the talk of having an AI center in Wiscasset will have any bearing upon looking at these battery farms for energy storage? Because they pull a lot of energy from what I've been
Yeah,
reading.
I think they need massive generators, so, like generating power, so they need a lot more than the battery just capturing to smooth out the peaks and the
Gotcha.
valleys.
My other question was, so with this in place now for accepting donations, in what format? Like, someone's not gonna say, I'm gonna Venmo you, right?
No, we don't take Venmo, checks.
Those
That's it.
checks?
Yeah,
No other way though, at this point? Just,
I'd say right now checks.
Yeah,
I mean, we
okay.
can talk about credit cards, but someone would have to.
I think we have to
Yeah.
create a form. We have a few things we've got to put in place before we really wanna knock on
fine
the
details.
door.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and we need to hear from Mary Beth.
Well, I just add that you want to be really careful of asking people that have big capacity for money prematurely before you have your case for support, before you have all your messaging down and what you need, because you'll end up getting a lower level gift. And they'll be like, well, I gave at the office.
That
You know,
makes
I already
sense,
gave.
yeah.
So you don't want to cut, you know, you want to be really careful about how you do this opportunity. And frankly, it is somewhat of a challenge because, you know, donors want to know that you've got it locked and loaded. They want to, you know, they want to know that you're all set. So that does add, you know, you usually want to go out to your highest level donors first.
Mhm.
So, you know, putting that tangible in there is really a challenge that I could talk more about. if you
And
want to hear it.
It's almost
And
time.
both,
You're tired of me and I already got kicked out.
and both these people so far, I did not approach, they approached us.
Yeah.
And I want to be careful that I really don't want to be the one making approaches, because I don't want people to think that somehow
They get
the
offended.
towns, insisting that they do this or else or whatever. So,
Yeah.
but those are good points.
I
Yeah,
do
you
have
just
one
wanna
question.
Know exactly what you're asking for if you go to people that have big capacity.
Yeah.
My question is how you came up with the date for 2028?
Random.
Okay.
So the
Is it
thought was
changeable?
enough. I see this on CPIC, there's people ready to quit the committee just because it's taken forever to get the new zoning code.
Okay.
So my thought is, we need to have a date that's far enough to be able to try to make it happen. But on the other hand, we want a date that's soon enough that people don't lose energy.
Does
so
Mark think that that's a date that would be,
I haven't discussed it all with Mark.
Okay.
So this is saying the building has to be completed by that date. This is just saying we have to be moving forward by that date.
okay,
So you have to have a certain amount of the money
Yeah,
in by that date, and we're not quite sure what that amount is.
a lot.
Well,
3 million?
Yeah.
3 million?
Wow.
3 million.
depends how big a building you want. You know, let's say if you want a $27 million building, I'd like to see the fundraising be 5 million or more.
Okay, that's helpful.
That is really helpful.
But that's just me, you know, that's,
Um,
the more the better.
Wow, yeah.
Because of all the things I've listed, I think the hardest one to make happen be the TIF one. The legislature may not be willing to change that, so. But
It's just annoying. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
oh, the last
Yeah.
piece is, we're
Just
also,
handed us down.
we're also gonna try to get our name
Go,
on the
go, go.
congressionally directed spending list. That's how some of the other towns have done some of their improvements, so, you know, if we can get some money out of that too, it'd be good.
Great. Well,
All right.
let's get some more money with Mary Beth.
Bring on the money. Turn on the faucet. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me here. I'm really, I feel like I spend more time out of state and I really want, you know, I'm back here in Maine and I'd love to make a difference here in Maine instead of other places. So thank you. So I'll just introduce myself to you guys a little bit. I have 20-something years, you know how you stop counting? 20-something years of experience as an executive director of a small nonprofit, like $500,000 of losing money to, you know, all the way through serving as a vice president of philanthropy, which is actually a senior management position within healthcare. So you actually sit at the table and are expected to know something. I think a lot of people have a kind of a misperception of what fundraising is, and it's very strategic, and it's not like you sit in an office and somebody tells you what you should fundraise for. You're in there helping build the strategic plan. So it's more than just dialing for dollars and having a bake sale. It, you know, at different levels, it just gets more and more sophisticated, I guess you would say. After doing that at, you know, small nonprofits, community hospitals, larger health systems, you know how they get so big. Then in Massachusetts, doing it when it was crazy merger activity, and then at Dana-Farber. So I've raised a good amount of money, around $250 million over the course of my career, and had just great opportunities to raise money for really great causes. So I know it from this size and that size, and I think that's one of the benefits of, you know, having us, because we work with all different size nonprofits, whether, you know, in your backyard size, grassroots, or national size, and we can kind of scale to what type of nonprofit you are. And then I have lots of years of experience in Maine, so I know Maine pretty well. So, okay, so that's a little bit about me. I'm also a adjunct professor at Northeastern. That seems to be something that people really get impressed by. And I teach leadership and nonprofit stuff, a whole bunch of stuff. So there, that's me. Okay, so let's move on. And so what I thought I'd do is talk to you a little bit about campaigns, kind of review what was in the last PowerPoint, a suggested, you know, campaign time frame. I want to talk to you a little bit about strategic planning because of the type of information you need to have when you're talking to a donor, especially those big donors, and how the strategic plan lends itself to your case for support. And that's like the little Bible that tells the story of how this is going to benefit and make, you know, the quality of life, you know, people healthier, you know, the story of what happens when we do this. And then a feasibility study, which is the study you do to figure out how much money can you actually raise. Like, it's not like this, you know, there's a real science to it. And you really want to know that before you go out there and make a commitment that, you know, hey, we're going to raise 10 million. I actually thought you were, I must have misheard something, but I thought you were going to raise 27 million.
That would be nice.
That would ensure that we have a pool.
And the pool is big. I saw that, you know, when I was reviewing your stuff, and I love to swim. So I'd be coming over here from Brunswick, crossing county lines or whatever. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about like what it takes to run a campaign, so you guys understand, like, is it possible to happen in this committee, or would you need a much larger committee? And my recommendation would be, and I think you'll agree, larger. Okay, so so let's go through it. Okay, so I read your stuff and I thought you guys had done an amazing amount of work and, you know, really good due diligence. And that's not always the case. So you are to be congratulated that you have such a strong base to work from and good information and, you know, really good stuff. What I did see was that it's going to cost you about $1 million to operate the facility. I think you have 995 in program fees. And then you have 160 that you would probably have to raise money for on an annual
We're
basis,
still
or you
working,
think?
so
you don't
just to
know?
kind of clarify,
Yeah.
there are a few of us that are on a subcommittee that are gonna put a pro forma together and really look at the types of programs, passes, all of the entities that we can provide. That was, I think, it was a AI generated.
Yeah, we started with, you know, Chat GPT, and
Sure.
then we refined it for, you know, what we are looking forward to. But that was really, it was really just kind of our first step.
Your back of the envelope.
It was really just to say, we have a general idea of what an operating budget would be when we presented this to the select board, so that we could get, you know, approval for the next phase of all of this. So I think that's a great ballpark, but it definitely is not like, this is what our operating
yeah,
budget
this
is
is all
gonna
nice
be,
and
yeah,
pretty
yeah,
and
it
all
was,
done,
it's
and that's
really
okay.
just to give us a general idea of, where it's gonna be at least, probably around at least $1 million each year.
Yeah,
I
So,
think the
yeah.
goal is to have program fees cover most of the operational costs.
Yeah,
Um,
you,
and
you did a pretty good job, I thought.
thank you.
$9.95, I mean,
And-
that would be nice if everything worked out
And
like
the
that.
more we could do fundraise for the capital so that it shrinks
Yeah.
the bond, then certainly the more tolerance I think there would be of the taxpayers to pay operational costs.
Yep. Okay, and then, and then you're kind of also thinking about partnerships. Okay, so I got it. Thank you for the clarification. So that's what I understood. So when I looked at,
Ooh, sorry.
I can't go that fast. Okay, so when I look at, this is what I have for the number of residents, and you guys may know better.
That's about right.
Pretty good. So when you talk about people who can make a donation, the folks that can make somewhat larger donations are individuals who make around 200,000 plus. The average household income in your area is 110, which is pretty good. I mean, those folks are comfortable, and most likely a lot of them will give. You have a really highly educated population too, who will understand, all the different ways that this community center can benefit you. And you have I think that's a young population, but is that because I'm getting older? No. But, for Maine, I think that's a pretty good number. Who are interested in, and you guys have confirmed it, are interested in the kind of stuff that you want to do in this community center. So that's cool too. So, so that's a good, you have 900 households that have an income of 200,000, right? So that's not bad. So let's go take a look. Did you know your neighbors have that much money? Oh, I'm back.
I think it helps that we have Highland Green and Highlands.
No kidding.
Yes, and that probably raises the
Because I
average age.
just met someone and she was just whining, oh God, the community center, where's that going, in my backyard, Negative Nancy. Anyway, so when we talk about a campaign, these are the big, like the really big steps, and it makes it look really easy, like, a little pre-campaign planning, feasibility study, and we're off to the races. And then we go into the campaign quiet phase. And that's when you want to raise the most money, is the quiet phase. That's when you want to really be talking to your big heavy hitters, and you don't want to be saying to them, well, it might happen and it might not. So you want to, you kind of want to get to that phase before the majority of people hear a thing about it, or else they will get what's called, fatigue. Like, are you gonna ever build this thing? Like, why is it taking so long? So you keep it under wraps until you have like anywhere from 50 to 75% of what it is you want to raise. So the long time that it's, like you're not plastering everything everywhere, asking everybody. And so again, you have to be careful about like how many people are you going to let know that you're doing this thing to raise some money. Otherwise they'll be like, oh my God, I've been doing that forever. And then that's when you do the big kickoff, like the really fun kickoff. And then you announce the public phase when you only need to raise, like all of us can give. All of us can give our $100 gifts, our $250 gifts, maybe even our $1,000 gifts or 2,500. But, we've already got the majority of the money in the bank. So that public phase is really exciting and fun. And, it's like, I love the public phase. I like the quiet phase too, though. But anyway, and then, of course, the post campaign is really, really important, because if you have any money from your operating budget that you need to continue to raise money for, you want to make sure that you've provided really good stewardship, and you've really let your donors know how much you appreciate them and how awesome they are, and you're able to articulate what's the benefit, like how much healthier is the community. Maine Health can help you with that, because they do a report anyway. But they'll help you kind of gather that data so you have it. So anyway, the worst thing that people do is they run a campaign and they're like, phew, all the money's raised, right? And then they don't talk to their donors, and then, stuff happens and they're like, oh shit, now we have to call these people up. Well, I never heard from you. I never knew that, I never knew what happened, or I never knew how grateful you were. So you don't want to let that drop. That's the worst mistake you can make. Okay, clear?
Yeah.
You got it. So I got some really great questions, which I have these are the answers to the questions. And if I could get my computer to work, I could tell you what the questions are, but I'll just talk about it since my computer doesn't want to talk to me. So someone asked, what is success in a campaign? And success in a campaign is achieving, obviously the dollar goal. And it's really about the number of relationships you successfully build, because, unless you're unusual, you're going to need those folks. So treat them really well, because, that's a great donor base. The ideal number of people for a committee depends on, how much money do you want to raise? What kind of capacity do we find in the community? So how many people are you going to need to talk to? So we have a pool of people, we have 900 people who make over 200,000. So so that's a lot of people that could consider making a gift. But we don't know what level yet. We don't know what their giving history is and what level, like people can have millions of dollars in the bank and be miserly. So you can think, oh, this person's really wealthy. We're gonna have a meeting with them. They're gonna give us a lot of money. And they're like, they're just giving $1,000 gifts, and that's not gonna get you there. So, like once we figure that out, and you do that with research, it's really scary what we can find out about people. But it's so much smarter. Like the smaller your committee is, the smaller, and you have no staff, so the smaller your staff is, right? Or you'll probably chip some in or something, or it'll be you.
Pretty much, yeah.
With all the time you have. That also depends on how big the committee is and like what kind of people you need. So we can talk more about that. So determining, what's the timeline depends on a lot of things that like it's one of those, chicken egg things. But there is a progression and you can get there. But I can't really answer that honestly for you right at the moment. If I had a guess, I'd say you need, at least like 20 people. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a big deal, right?
No.
But you have to tell me what the like we have to know what the number is, right? Okay, and then I loved this question, like consultant, how much does the consultant do and how much does the committee do? And if I, if I was, back at Dana-Farber, right? And I was consulting and they have like 250 fundraisers. Isn't that crazy? Right? It still is volunteers who bring in more money than the most professional senior fundraiser, because they, unless your fundraiser is good and makes lots of relationships with people, but because you guys, because I don't have the relationships that you have with community people, they know and trust you. And that's a lot different than having, I'm really good at fundraising and I can teach you how to do it, but I can accompany you. And that's, that's really good. But it's those relationships that people really give to because they trust you. And, if I or another professional fundraiser tags along with you, that's good because they have both that expertise and you have the trust. Because giving is really you know, it's not about how slick you do the presentation or any of those things. It's really about like, I trust you, I respect your opinion. And yeah, on my list of things that I want, it's somewhere in there, in my top 10 things that I want in this community. So that's what the sync is. So I can teach you to do all these things. And depending how much you want to see me, you know, I can do some of it with you. And I think, I mean, that's really how I learned how to fundraise, was going out with someone and being like, that's it? Don't tell anyone. Okay, so those are the answers to those questions, and I'll try to move. Tell me how I'm doing on time.
Give as much as you need.
I'm okay? Okay,
We
So-
finish the meeting when we're done. So when we're done, we'll be done. So.
so nice to be here. I'm telling you, like, when I got to Dana-Farber, I was so ready to come back to Maine. I was like, oh my God, so much hierarchy and just, I was like, I'm just done. I am cooked and I don't want to drive over the Zaken Bridge anymore. So, so I gave you guys this campaign, planning chart, and, you know, if you were gonna raise, when I did this, I was thinking you were raising money for $27 million, but like that would take you at least 2 to 3 years, depending on what you decide to raise. You know, I can take a shot in the dark, but again, you know, everything is kind of contingent on how many people have how much money and what are they used to giving. You know, because people don't wake up in the morning and say, you know, I can't wait to give away all of my wealth. Today is the day. I am dumping that money. So, you know, and I think this is a great little chart. It just, you know, gives you at a fairly high level what happens at each stage of the campaign. And you can see the last thing you want to do, I think these numbers are too small. You know, I would expand it. So that's a really fast campaign. But, you know, at least 2 to 3 years, depending on how much you want to raise. You know, if you want to raise anywhere from, you know, like 10 million and up, it could even be longer, a little bit longer. Okay,
Well,
nobody's
you were
scared yet.
pretty much spot on then with December.
Yeah,
28th.
perfect.
And there's also nothing magic about this, so that if after this group meets with Mary Beth and they say, we really want to use a different date, we just go back to the select board and say, can you change the date? Because as you said, we're not going to be using it immediately anyway. So
But maybe we do set a goal for 10 million. No, that seems like it'd be a solid amount. to
I'd
go
wait
towards.
till you have the research back on
Okay.
who's out there and what are they giving. Because what you want is so I'm just gonna give you a little research thing, if you don't mind. Okay, so when you use research, to kind of figure out who in your community, you know, might be a donor, you look at a couple things. So the first thing you do is you look at capacity. Do they have the money? And you want to figure out, do they have the liquid money? Not just are they living in a big house with no furniture, right? And they have a big tax, you know, it's advanced more than that. So we want to see that, you know, like they are stable financially and they have this much money that's liquid. And we can identify how much money could they give over 5 years if we were their only favorite charity and they didn't have a grandchild that they had to get through college or an elderly parent that they're, you know, they're paying their expenses, their living expenses, right? So like, you know, we can't know that stuff, but that's another story. And that's about discovery, which kind of qualifies donors. So you're always looking for capacity, then you're looking for affinity. How many gifts have they given to this kind of cause? Something similar that's in the same bucket, right? And what size are those gifts? What's the propensity? So it's capacity, affinity, and propensity. And so you look at those three things and it gives you a score. Isn't that amazing? It gives you a score of how likely that person is to donate to your cause. Understanding that there's a whole black box that we don't know about until we do some, what's called qualification. I'm gonna tell you everything I know in like less than an hour. Isn't that sad?
With the
Okay,
qualification, just to kind of clarify for
Yeah.
everybody, and I think I understand that that's a component that your company offers, putting that together and giving that information to this group.
yeah, I can do that for you. I can do that for you, and there's all different levels at which you do that, and like I always recommend, you're only gonna use the highest level of research, which can cost like $350 for one person, but if they can give you, 2 million or 1 million, it's worth it to know who you're talking to, what's the realistic gift size. And then I can tell you about the best way to, ask for a gift from someone like that, and then how to have an initial conversation that helps you decide they're gonna be really interested in donating to the gym. That's what's gonna really matter to them, or the pool. But, there's ways of getting that information out of them. In fact, they'll give you more information than you ever wanted to know.
Can I
Usually.
ask, how do the businesses factor into that?
The businesses factor in, you can do some research on companies. And, you can find out like, okay, well, this is what their company generates. So this is, what they take home after they paid everybody and all of that. So you can estimate that, and you can look at their giving history just like a person's, right? They've supported this cause and that, and that cause. And so if they've made some, nice sized donations, you can pick those up. Yeah, good question. Okay, and the same thing goes for foundations, like who's funding this kind of thing in the state of Maine, right? Okey doke. All right, so I'm gonna talk about a couple of these other phases in more detail, but right now, that's plenty of information for you guys to kind of look at each of those little phases. Okay, let's go.
Wrong.
So here's some guidelines. So I'm not sure, you're talking about by 2028, you would need some significant money raised, possibly.
What I had with this resolution says basically by December of 2028, you need a broken ground, in essence. So yeah, we need significant money before that, and we need to have the bond.
Yeah.
For the part that doesn't get fundraised.
So the pre-campaign planning can, you can rush it, but it's really much better if you, spend the time that you need, because you're kind of building the infrastructure of the campaign. And you're gathering all of the information that these donors ask. If we identify some, larger donors who can give you some real money and really move you forward. So pre-campaign planning can take anywhere from, 3 months or longer. And what you want to do in your pre-campaign planning, and I'll talk more about what you get in pre-campaign planning. But what you want to do is be all set to do the feasibility study, which is where you're, going to some of these individuals that you've identified at a high level. And then you're kind of finding out, you want to know, like, are they funding their grandchild's college education? Are they, like, what's going on, so that you can kind of estimate what might they be willing to do. And, we build, you've all heard of that gift pyramid, right? So you actually, like, build a little pyramid with people kind of estimating, what might they give. And so, you have a pretty educated guess on what you might walk out with. So, you know, you have to get a fair amount of information ready to have the feasibility study, and the people you want to do the feasibility study with are some of your wealthier people. Because, you know, like everybody that's not contributing will be like, yeah, let's do it, right? But the people who are, you know, contributing at a higher level are gonna ask you more pointed questions. So you really need, you know, a fair amount of information that you guys have done a really good job gathering. But as you're saying, like, it's the back of the envelope stuff. So there's another level. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I'm saying goodbye to some Catherine.
I thought
The
she was saying,
ATM.
time's up, get out. So here's some ranges. The feasibility study can take, you know, the pre-campaign planning can take, you know, can be done efficiently if you guys have all the information. If you don't, it takes longer. The feasibility study is a matter of scheduling. Like, can you get these people to talk to you in a 3-month time period? Are they the kind of people that are gonna be in Florida? And unless you wanna send somebody to Florida to ask them, you know, which I'm willing to do.
In the winter.
I like to say at Palm Beach. Anyway, but, you know, that's the problem always, is the scheduling, is just getting a hold of these people, because the wealthier they are, sometimes the more they're traveling, and really doesn't sound
At what point would we need to have like our 20-something people volunteers ready to jump into this?
I think you'd want to have like 10, you know, like an additional. So I'm talking about you guys and like another 20 people.
Yeah.
So I think you'd want to have like another 10 on board, to help, like, after you get through those 3 months, you'd want to like have 10, and then you'd want to kind of pace it and start to add other folks. You know, with maybe before you get to the quiet phase, you want to add a lot more people. Because you know, the more people you're dealing with, even though you're not raising as much money, the more people you're dealing with, the more moving parts there are. And that's when you're doing events and the kind of stuff that just, you know, absorbs people into a black hole, right? So, okay, so let's keep going. So in the pre-campaign timeline, which is what, you know, which is like the first, you know, several months, you want to make sure that you've identified what your strategic priorities are, what your goals and objectives are, and how you're going to meet those. So, you know, when I talk about a strategic plan, especially at this stage, I'm looking for like 3 to 5 top priorities. You know, a couple of, you know, what is it going to cost you? And then how are we going to get there? Like, you know, like 3 bullets underneath it. So we're really, you know, not the giant, you know, McKinsey strategic plan that's 20 something, 30 pages. It's a kind of a high level one. And that gives you the information that you can put into your case for support, which is like the big thing that you need. The other thing that I would think about is, you know, as you get closer and closer, is what are the naming opportunities and what are the programmatic opportunities that you might be offering people? Because, you know, along with your gift card, while you're having research done, along with your, so you have your gift card and your little bricks of how many donors you need to talk to, but you also have, you know, you want to have some naming opportunities, really attractive naming opportunities. So, you know, some people really like that. The really altruistic ones don't want that, but, you know, a lot of people like, and there's all sorts of reasons why naming is really helpful. And to do that, that gives you your funding opportunities. So again, what are the big strategic priorities that link to your funding priorities? And the organizations that can tie that together, they tend to get more money. Because donors are like, they're smart, they're on their game, they're not in the hamster wheel. And I'm sure we've all volunteered for lots of nonprofits that you're like, oh, for God's sake, are they gonna, we're just gonna all be working and working every year to just try to get through through the budget. So, definitely you have the capacity to get further along than that. So let's see where we go next. Let's see what I planned next for us. Okay, so basically what I've just done, you use the strategic planning to give you the information to do your case for support, which is like the Holy Grail. And nobody ever reads the Holy Grail like at one time. It's not something like nobody wants to read that thing, right? You slice it and dice it and personalize it for, the particular donor that you're going to talk to, and, you raise it up so that it's a more high level view for the appeal letters you're gonna send that people actually look at, but it's it's what you refer to, it's your reference guide, and it kind of has, kind of the rules of the road in terms of what is it we're fundraising for, what are the key messages, what are the benefits, how are we gonna measure and evaluate that, blah, blah, blah. So then after you do that, you wanna make sure your board and committee members have basic training on capital campaigns. You lock the door so nobody runs out of the room screaming. And then you do some recruitment planning because you want to be really strategic about who, like, there's lots of people who say they want to fundraise. They might not be talking about, like, they can talk about like, oh, I want to do a gala and I want to do a golf tournament and I want to do this and that and the other thing. It's not sitting down, and like the most efficient way to raise money is to sit down with people and ask them for money. And everyone will do everything except that. They want to do like a softer, kinder way. They want to do it by email. They want to do it in social media. They want to do it all these other ways. But, if you want, you're going to need some big gifts because of what you're raising. So getting comfortable with that. And honestly, I can teach you how to be comfortable doing that. I really can. And then, committee members, one of the best things they can do is be willing to identify individuals, companies, and foundations, and be willing to make an introduction. It's best if they can go with you, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So let's see, I do know what's coming next. Okay, so the case for support, like an outline of it includes like, who are we? What do we want to accomplish? Like I would include stuff about the health of your community, and so it's really a need in our community to provide this. And then I talk about the other needs, like there is no community hearth anymore that everybody's talking at. And the community center is really important because it gives people a place to go, which is important, and to feel like they're part of a community, which is really important for their mental health and well-being. And there's stats to that kind of stuff. So, like, why does this campaign matter? What's going on in our community that outlines what the need is that's driving this campaign? Yeah, it's nice to have, but there's more than that. And then how are you going to do it? Why are you the most qualified organization to do this? Obviously, you are all, that's why you're all involved. What are the testimonials? Who are the people? Like, you've done a lot of that, but what you need to do now is find out who are the people that are somewhat prestigious, that everybody thinks of as a leader in this community. Who are the influencers? You need a couple people with money that people listen to endorse it. Why do we need to do it right now? So we just need to answer all these questions and then put it in a really nice story for you. And then, what can you do? Right? You can give us cash, and we want, you can give us money, but that's not how we answer it, but it's a lot more elegant than that. But basically, people can do a couple things. They can volunteer, right? Which is valuable. They can, make a gift, or they can include you in their estate plan. And for
They have to die.
yeah, they have to knock you out. Then we will knock you out. We'll see you in a crosswalk. But a lot of people love this town. They've lived here their whole lives. Their families have lived here for their whole lives. But they don't have a lot of money. So, if you get them to agree to, 10% of their estate when they pass away, that's when you see, we all hear about these people who left $1 million, right? So, there are modest people out there that aren't, driving a fancy car or living in a big house that, will have money. And they want to leave it to the place where they lived. And, if youth is a priority for you guys, youth, they want to leave it to that next generation. So, understanding planned gifts is something you want to do in a capital campaign. I hope you choose me. I've given you a lot of good information. Okay.
We could vote. Just vote.
So anyway, so here's what you have to do as a committee member, and take a look at this, so you have to make a generous gift. And, that differs depending on who you are. I'm sure there's a lot of millionaires sitting here. We expect a really big gift. And, you need to be able to identify and introduce, engage, invite, and thank people. And, that's where half the people walk out of the room, right? I don't want to do, I can tell you who has money, but I'm not, these are my close friends, and I don't know that I want to introduce them to you, or it's my family. I have a wealthy family member. That's the kind of scary stuff. But the thing that I tell people is that we don't expect everybody to be out asking for money. If you can introduce them and bring them to some sort of gathering where we talk about it, or, hopefully there's some people who are like, I love to ask for money. They're out there. I'm one of them. So, hopefully we can get a couple of them that are willing to do that, close the deal piece. But, fundraisers only spend 10% of their time asking for money, 90% of their time. I know. That's what I mean. People think we're just dialing away and, going and turning people upside down on their heads. We're spending most of our time building relationships where people trust us and believe that, we're giving them the straight scoop. We know what we're talking about, and our organization can prove that we are making a difference. So you have the measurement and evaluation. If you don't have it, at least you talk about it intelligently. And we can do that. I can help you do that. Okay, and then, you have to tell the story that we're going to tell in the case for support, and then we're going to make it, all different sizes. You meet somebody for coffee, you see somebody in the grocery store, you've got 5 seconds. They ask you, what are you up to? Well, the most exciting thing I'm doing is working on the blah, blah, blah. And usually people will say, well, I'd love to learn more, and say, oh, okay, I'll call you up. Right? They fall right into it. On the phone. So anyway, so we're going to give you, part of what I think we do really well is help you tell the story in all different increments. You got a 5-minute version, you got stuck on an elevator with somebody and they can't go anywhere. You meet them in the grocery store, you take them for coffee, you have them for lunch, you got to expand the story. You're doing a presentation in front of a company, right? And you're talking to 6 people, and they're all tough business people. So we give you, how do you change that story and tell a story that's true for you? It's not one story, it's the story that you tell. And if it's a fake story that I just manufacture and give to you, it doesn't, it's not as convincing. We have to find a place where in that story, you get really jazzed about a particular thing that's gonna happen in this, and you tell that story. And then, that enthusiasm just comes up. Amazing. So, yeah, and then you need certain people who aren't afraid. So anyway, campaign job description, I've just pretty much talked about it, but remember, you need different kind of people. Lots of people can be involved in fundraising by doing thank you notes, thank you calls, assisting with, for the big donors, right? Those big donors we're gonna get, you need to plan a fair amount of ribbon cutting ceremonies for them. So there's lots of different ways for people, and there's, really easy ways to invite people to give to something. And I just did a presentation on how not to ask for money and raise money. I know, now you're really curious. Okay, so I think all that's good. Let's see where we go next. I want to wrap this up for you guys so you can finally go home. Okay, so I think we've talked about this stuff, like that's part of your actual campaign planning. So there's the pre-campaign planning, and then we get like, here's the case that we're going to give on one page. Here's the case that we're going to give in infographics, because that's all anybody reads anymore. We used to send people these tomes, and I don't know if they actually ever read them, but we spent so much time on photography and making them look fancy pants. But nobody really reads that anymore. So the infographic and like a PowerPoint, and there's a couple of deliverables that you need to tell the story. Campaign folks, you also need a fair amount of, you need a communications plan, you need gift acceptance policies like you were talking about, so that you're on the straight and narrow. And there's another level of planning for how you engage those like bigger donors, and then general things for everybody who's going to give under this amount of money. Here's how we might engage them. Everybody in this category, here's how we might engage them. So, yeah, there's a fair amount of planning going on. Does that sound like fun? So fun. Okay, let's go on to the next thing. So for the feasibility study, so I think in the first piece of work, what I'd like to see us do is get all the way through the stuff, a lot of the stuff that we've talked about, or at least get the bare bones on it, so we can come up with the questions for the feasibility study. So you're gonna have a lot of stuff to work with before you get into the actual planning. And I think that's gonna follow along very nicely with the amount of time you guys need to get the other things to fall in place, so that most folks don't do this as well as you do. I'm not trying to butter you up, but like they'll bring you in at the 11th hour, and then you're like, but you don't have this or that or the other thing, and they need to raise the money by this much time, and all that kind of stuff. And you need time to do these things well and to not lose your mind, because I probably just, you all decided like, oh. So, and those study results are, really important, because that really tells you what's realistic. Can we really do this? And you want to, like, before you go into the capital campaign, if you can't raise the money, a good consultant will tell you, you're not going to see that money, like abandon ship right now before you go into the whole thing. So that, because the worst thing you can do is come up with a number that's unrealistic and put it out there and fail. Like, you want to nail that number.
Mary Beth, and this kind of sits in the back of my head. We all really want the pool, but we realize that that's another $8 million off on the side. So do we focus on the community center, do we put the pool in there? How do you see those type of decisions and when do you make?
Let me
those?
see if I can answer for you.
Okay, go ahead.
I bet you're gonna
So
say,
he's a fundraising expert.
I bet you're gonna say, let's do the feasibility study first and see what we think we can raise.
I think
Oh
so.
my.
That's
You
actually,
popped my bubble.
isn't he smart? Wicked smart.
Oh,
So
you'd be surprised what he can pull out.
really, like right out of. You know, I had to always do what with my husband for like the first couple of years of our marriage. I was like, oh my gosh, you're so smart. And then I would be like, how do you know that? Like, where are you getting that from? And I realized, like,
I have
he's
to
just
share it with
drunk
all of you.
bullshit. Pass off like it's real.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks for sharing my secret.
He was so prepared for the fair, and I have to share this one, because I remember you looking at me like, we're sitting in the fair meeting, we're both walking in, we're kind of going, I wonder how this is gonna go. And Mark starts his presentation and he's talking, and then out of the blue, this gentleman across the way puts out the proposal that Mark was about to give them. And Mark goes, oh, that's exactly what I was gonna say.
You're so smart.
At that point, we were like, we're in. Hopefully.
Right, that's I think if you're a good fundraiser or a good business person or whatever, you can read a room, right? And you know when you're in like Flynn.
I don't know, did you read that room that night?
No, it went much better than I thought
I
it was
know,
gonna.
I know.
Oh, that's nice.
We both walked out going, oh my.
Yippee, you got something good here. So anyway, so what do I have next? Okay, so my understanding was you have 18 months to do these things. Right?
To complete to the best of our ability and then represent to the select board.
Ideally, which obviously listening to you and you're a learned person and everything.
I am, I teach at Northeastern University.
I
I'm
think,
not as smart as those kids, but.
I think the 18 months was to actually conclude the campaign, but as we've heard tonight, that's not realistic. So there's no reason the select board wouldn't say, we can adjust the timeframes, I guess is my point. The most important thing to them is a successful fundraising campaign to help reduce the tax dollars.
Right.
So if your learned advice says we need to do it differently, I'm sure they'd be happy to follow up.
Yeah, and I'd rather come in, like, be like, oh, we're killing it, and we got 3 months to spare before we have to, maybe they'd let us on the agenda early. But I'd rather, like, what is it? Overpromise, not overpromise,
Underpromise and
underdeliver. We want to do it the other way around. So I think that is feasible. I took I was looking at like 6 months to kind of get you through, to get you to like the feasibility study is like all drafted 6, but it again, it depends on how much information do you have that we can now put into it. So we have to just gate it, because again, we don't want to be like, well, we're just kidding around. This is the back of the envelope. Please stay out, like we want to back it up a little bit more. Because if we get those, those meetings, we want to be sure that, like, usually you have your consultant do that. But you want to be sure that you're giving them good information, because you want to use that feasibility question as actually engaging them. Starting to like warm them up to the idea that they want to give lots and lots of money. Okay, anything else? Gosh, I'm exhausted. Okay, I already did all this stuff. Yeah, so basically, you want to, I'm tired of myself. So you want to identify like 20 individuals and, you want to interview as many mucky mucks as you can. That's what all that.
And do you have like a guideline for us to like say, what do you ask these people? And
Oh, yeah, I would create the
so are you
questions
gonna
for
hold
you.
our hand the whole time, I guess?
Yeah, well, there's lots of different ways that you can do this. You know, so there's, you know, full on that we, you know, like, I'm your campaign consultant, you know, and I can, you know, and I help you staff it. And, you know, we do some back of the house work for you, like the full enchilada. And then there's, you know, like the other method is for us to just coach you through it all. And, you know, not do the heavy lifting. And, you know, it all depends on what you can afford.
Why don't we, at this point, stop the recording so we can talk more turkey? Because I don't want you necessarily
Yeah,
bound for the rest of the world to see forever on
good.
our YouTube
Yeah.
channel as we talk numbers, so.
Oh, good.
so-
Yeah, I've had people do that to me.
Are you gonna